Hey guys, it's hard to believe, but we are reviewing our last unit together. I'm just going to be talking about some of the history today, some of the core beliefs of perspectives, and some of the famous individuals of psychology that we went through this year. Okay, so the first portion is asking to match the famous psychological figures to his or her corresponding descriptive statement. I tried to be clever with these. I tried. Okay. So if you forget who the psychologist is, like entirely, you should probably look up the psychological concept that they came up with next to their name. All right. Um, let's go over this. Hey, baby, what's your archetype? Lie down next to me so we can experience the collective unconscious. Okay. So archetypes, collective unconscious. Of course, we are talking about Carl Jung. Okay. And Carl Jung is going to be J. Okay. He also came up with things like the persona, the anima, the animus. He was a neo Freudian, a psychodynamic theorist who broke away from Freud's very focused opinion of sexuality and looked towards spirituality instead. Okay, number two, doggone it. This name ought to ring a bell or a metronome. The name that rings a bell is always going to be Ivan Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov, or G. Okay, he's the father of classical conditioning, famous Russian physiologist that kind of accidentally stumbled upon one of the most famous findings in psychology. Would never call himself a psychologist, but he eventually came up with this idea that two stimuli become associated with one another to create a newly learned response. Okay, but I didn't know I'd need money to get through this cognitive map. Okay, you have to pay the toll man to get through the maze. Okay, we're looking for Edward Tollman here. Cognitive maps, latent learning, even in the absence of reinforcement directly after going through a map, the rats will learn a route. And then later on, when they are reinforced, they will go through it faster, knowing that they had some sort of hidden learning. So that's going to be L. Okay. Honk honk, decent printing. Okay. This was gonna be Conrad Lawrence. He came up with the idea that an animal will follow a surrogate substitute mother if it is introduced to that person or other animal within its critical period. Remember, critical period is a time in which something either happens or does not happen at all. Don't monkey around. I'm attached here. Okay. The famous monkey experiments dealing with contact comfort are the Harlows. Okay, and we know that being touched, being held, in the absence of that, is going to lead to things like psychosocial dwarfism when you are not your growth or development is stunted. Okay, all rats. I forgot to desensitize you, little Albert. I'm sorry. Okay, so of course, that is none other than John B. Watson. All rats. Okay. John B. Watson, father of behaviorism, really built off of the ideas of Ivan Pavlov to apply the understanding of classical conditioning to train a child to feel certain emotions about a rat and a bunny, and then eventually, because of generalization, about a variety of things. Not the most ethical experiment of all time. There was no informed consent, just used an orphan. But regardless, John B. Watson leaves a legacy. Come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Give unconditional positive regard to one another right now. You probably, you probably don't know that song, but it's one of my favorites. Unconditional positive regard is Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers came up with a fully functioning person, congruence between ideal and real self. He really wanted to look at self-actualization for the rest of us. When ideal and real selves matched, then we could be the best version of who we were, which he called a fully functioning person. He's also the founder of client-centered or person-centered therapy. Active listening, unconditional positive regard, just the hippie support system we need to be our best self. think out of the box. It's rewarding. So the guy who came up with boxes and put animals in boxes to demonstrate his theory of how rewards and punishments were going to impact behavior was going to be none other than B.F. Skinner. He is the father of operant conditioning, or this more voluntary form of learning that is going to result from the consequences of behavior rather than stimulus associations. Okay. Number 9, he believes that when you say one thing, you mean your mother. It's supposed to be funny, like you mean another. That's actually a Freudian slip. So we know that it has to be the great Sigmund Freud. Okay. I could probably create an entire handout of all of his findings. From the beginning, the 3 parts of your psyche, id, ego, superego, the parts of consciousness, your unconscious, your conscious, and your preconscious. Likewise, the ego defense mechanisms, rationalization, repression, regression, reaction formation, denial, displacement, projection, sublimation, the psychosexual stages of development. Only adults play, love, games, oral, anal, phallic, latent, genital, and all the fixations that came about with that. Oedipus complex, Electra complex, identification, goes on and on and on. All right. It looks like a picture of a guy who created ink blots. Yep, that is Herman Rorschach. That is going to be a psychodynamic personality assessment tool, an assessment. It is going to be a projective test where you project your own inner desires, motives, emotions onto this series of ink blots. The other famous projective test is a TAT, or the thematic apperception test, which is when you assign a story to a series of pictures. Okay. Many people found his experiments on obedience to authority shocking. Shocker. That is Stanley Milgram. Yes, 2/3 of the people who were in the study were willing to administer the maximum voltage shocks to those quote unquote learners on the other side. Remember, no one was actually getting shocked. It was a deceptive study. Deception didn't make it unethical, though. The thing that made it unethical was the long-term risk of harm. He only agreed to hire Archie to fulfill his safety needs. Hierarchy. So cool. That is going to be Abraham Maslow. Okay. And remember, the hierarchy of needs is P.S. Belsa: physiological, safety, belongingness, esteem, self-actualization. Okay, moving on to the back. Bam, bum, lur. Don't forget, they're nonsense syllables. Okay, that is going to be none other than the great man, the great memory researcher, Hermann Ebbinghaus. He, remember, trained himself to remember nonsense syllables and then noted how many he forgot over time. And what he found was a forgetting curve that recall decreased sharply and then plateaued off, saying that there were savings when you relearned information. Watch out, Bobo. The guy has a hammer. Okay, so who is the famous guy for Bobo study? Well, that can only be Albert Bandura. Come on, Albert. Where are you? You are X, Albert Bandura. Okay, social learning theory, observational learning, reciprocal determinism, all important Bandurian terms. Boo-hoo! I'm sad because I'm crying. Well, that is going to be William James and Carl Lange, which I just found out is the proper way to say his name. I've been saying Lang my entire life. The more you know. Okay. Oh yeah, Freud? How about womb envy? Oh, Karen Horney. You got the mean jabs. Yeah, I mean, Karen Horney was going to be a feminist response to Sigmund Freud. She took offense to the whole idea of penis envy, saying that men were actually more jealous that they could not carry children. She also came up with the idea of neurotic needs, which were normal desires and anxieties taken to an extreme, and kind of shifted away from the singular focus on sexuality to a more social focus. Ah, lad, you can't help but innately learn language. Not really sure. That was really, really bad accent. But LAD is supposed to stand for the language acquisition device, which is supposed to be, in theory, this module of our brain that is going to make it that you're born with, that allows you to learn grammar that everyone is born with. And the person who came up with that is Noam Chomsky, the Chompster. Where are you, Noam Chomsky? There you are. Why? Okay. So in contrast to like behaviorist approaches or social approaches to language, Noam Chomsky has a very innate view of language with the language acquisition device and the idea that there's a critical period that the language acquisition device has to be turned on or you won't learn the language at all. Now you see it. Now you don't. Well, that's object permanence. So who came up with object permanence? That's going to be Jean Piaget. Okay, we develop object permanence during the first stage of development. It starts relatively early, around 8 months or so. And the first stage of development, remember, is the sensory motor stage of development. Santa, please come over 4 Oreos, sensory motor, pre-operational, operational, because Piaget is the doctor, the operator, okay, concrete operational, and formal operational. Sensory motor, object permanence develop. Pre-operational, we have things like egocentrism, irreversibility, atomism, centration. By the concrete operational stage, we have logical thought. We pass the conservation task. And then by formal operations, we're going to have more hypothetical and abstract ways of thinking. Hot dog. Thank you. I'm helplessly hungry. This is like a pretty evil one. I was referring to the dog shocking experiment and learned helplessness. So, yeah, that is going to be Seligman, wherever he is. Let's see on here. Yep, M. Remember, he shocked the dogs, and even when one group, they couldn't do anything to stop the shocks, and even when they were moved to a situation where they could actually press a lever to stop the shocks, they didn't even try. That's going to be something that happens in terms of clinical depression. People don't even try to get out of that type of situation. I'm multiply intelligent. Well, you are, John Gardner. You want to plant or garden as many intelligences as possible. John Gardner says that we have specialized intelligence on different modules of the brain, and that's explained, by things like savant syndrome. So it's in direct contrast to the next guy, where it says, "Gee, you're smart. You're the man." G. It's supposed to be like G, general intelligence. That is Charles Spearman. Oh man, I'm speechless. Okay, if you're speechless and you can't actually form words with your mouth, Boca, that is going to be Paul Broca. Q. Act your mental age. Okay, and who came up with mental age besides the great Albert Binet? Okay, we first start out with the Binet-Simon intelligence scale, originally in France. Then it comes to America as the Stanford-Binet, and the rest is really history. The most commonly used one in these days is the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, just because of the ease of administration. Everyone rides a carousel, 8 stages for 8 rides. Well, the only thing that comes in 8 really in this class is going to be the 8 stages of psychosocial development and Erik Erikson, trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, industry versus inferiority, identity versus role confusion, intimacy versus isolation, generativity versus stagnation, ego integrity versus despair. This is a strange situation. Don't be insecure. Okay. The person who did the strange situation was going to be Mary Ainsworth. Remember, she left infants in a room with a stranger, and then watched how they reacted when the mom left and when she came back. And she found that infants could either be securely or insecurely attached. The insecure infants could either be avoidant or anxious. The anxious children were very clingy when the mother came back, and clingy when she left as well. The avoidant infants didn't even notice. Right? And we talked about how those patterns of attachment can actually follow you through life. Intelligence, like aspects of love comes in 3s. That's going to be Sternberg, where are you? V, the Pac-Man, practical, analytical, and creative intelligence. Practical, street smarts. Analytical, the common type of IQ intelligence. Creative intelligence will be when we're talking about thinking about divergent solutions to a problem, or new uses for an object, overcoming functional fixedness, and so forth. Okay, then it goes to some multiple choice questions about history and perspectives. You're in a lecture about the history of psychology, and the speaker states that Wilhelm Wundt's theory of structuralism was the first scientific psychological theory. On what historical fact might the speaker be basing his argument? Wundt was internationally known at the time, and this lent credence to his theory in the scientific community. We'll leave that. Wundt studied under Ivan Pavlov for his graduate training, and Pavlov required scientific methods to be used. Nope. Structuralism was based on the results of an introspection experiment, so at least it is at least in part empirical. We're going to leave that because we know structuralism dealt with introspection, or this subjective type of experience of a stimulus. Structuralism was based on careful anecdotes gathered from Wundt's extensive career, or Wundt was the first person to study psychology in an academic setting. No. Okay, the answer here is structuralism was based on the results of his introspection experiments, so it was at least in part empirical. Yeah, he came up with the first lab in Leipzig, Germany in 1879, and with this introspection, although it was subjective, it was the real first type of experimentation in psychology. Without Wilhelm Wundt, we wouldn't have had psychology in a laboratory setting. Sigmund Freud's theory of the unconscious mind was revolutionary because it was the first comprehensive explanation of human thought and behavior. Well, let's think of the order of the schools. Sigmund Freud gets people bothered. There's Sigmund Freud beforehand, so that would mean that structuralism and functionalism was before psychoanalysis, so that can't be right. Resulted from discoveries about the human brain obtained from cadaver dissection. A little early for that. Is outdated and has no relevance for modern psychology. We're going to avoid general statements like that. No relevance. Focused entirely. There we go. That's another all or nothing statement. Depends on the idea that humans can remember events, but not be consciously aware of the memory. Yes, it is that. Okay, it is that. Although, the unconscious mind did focus a lot on human male sex drive, it wasn't an entire thing. Okay. Dr. Marco explains to a client that his feelings of hostility toward a coworker are most likely caused by the way that the client interprets the coworker's actions and the way that people should behave at work. Dr. Marco is most likely working from what perspective? Be careful here. Okay? Interprets the coworker's actions. It must be cognitive. When I say cognitive, you say thought, cognitive, thought, cognitive, thought. And interpretation is going to be just another word for thought. Just because it has the word action in it, that does not mean it's behavioral. Which of the following psychologists wrote the first psychology textbook? William James. He was also the father of functionalism. John Watson relied on the pioneering work of blank in establishing behaviorism as a paradigm of psychology. B.F. Skinner, Wilhelm Wundt, William James, Ivan Pavlov, or Sigmund Freud. We're talking about Pavlov here. He applied the findings of classical conditioning to, train little Albert in a way for him to fear those objects. One major difference between structuralism and functionalism is structuralists analyze all mental elements, while functionalists analyze some elements. Structuralists believe all behaviors stem from evolutionary processes. No, that would be functionalists. Structuralists wish to divide the mind into mental elements, while functionalists believe behavior helps an organism adapt to the environment. That's great. I'm going to leave that one. Only functionalists believe in the importance of introspection. No, that would be structuralists, or structuralists try to manipulate the mind in order to understand behavior, while functionalists do not. The answer here is C. Structuralists wish to divide the mind into mental elements, while functionalists believe behavior helps an organism adapt to the environment. Okay, structuralism versus functionalism. Structuralism, I'm looking at the parts of the mind. If it's like salt, it's NaCl, it's sodium chloride. That's what I'm interested in. Functionalism, I'm looking at the purpose of the mind, why we have it, why certain elements of the mind stuck around over time, why we have adapted, what has faded away. If I'm looking at salt, I'm looking at the purpose of salt, to season food, to preserve things, to ward off evil spirits, and so forth. Okay. Now remember, historically, there were 5 major schools of thought. Sigmund Freud gets people bothered. Structuralism, then came functionalism as a criticism of structuralism, then Gestalt, that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, then psychoanalysis and behaviorism. Okay. Psychoanalysis and behaviorism both became modern day perspectives. Functionalism is pretty much the evolutionary perspective. Structuralism kind of is seen in the cognitive perspective, and the Gestalt school is now seen in perceptual psychology, or the sensation and perception unit. All right, so we've done it. We've gone through the whole book again backwards together. Not the whole book, but what we could get through. Just want to say I'm proud of you. Keep on keeping on. We are going to do this. You are going to do this. You are awesome. You have the power. Harness it within you. Believe you can do it. Self-fulfilling prophecy. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.